The federal election is coming up and we want to hear from all of the Lethbridge candidates. Joining me now in studio is Marc Slingerland, the federal Christian Heritage Party candidate for the Lethbridge riding. Marc, welcome to BCN.
Thanks, Hal. Great to be here.
So why don't you explain, first of all, why did you want to get involved in politics? Not a very popular profession these days.
It isn't. Politics has become almost a four-letter word. It's spelled with a few more, but politics in the grand tradition is a way of serving the country. It's actually ordering the affairs of the country for the good of the citizenry. And so it's discouraging for me when I see all the major party leaders and the large parties chasing after votes, and basically that means buying votes, trying to spend millions here and billions there for the fractions that they think we'll get there, and really leaving that question of what's best for the country. And we have a history in Canada. It's one of the best countries in the world because of good decisions that have been made in the past, and we are leaving that aside, and it's time to go back. So I want to present a positive vision for Canada.
I mentioned to people that the Christian Heritage Party candidate from Lethbridge is coming in. They said, wait a minute, Christian Heritage Party? I thought they went under. They're still around?
Absolutely. We've been here since 1988, and we are still going strong, still representing those same principles that built Canada.
How many candidates do you have across the country?
There are 50. Yesterday
well,
was
you
the
need more than
deadline,
that.
So yes,
338.
we do. Yes, we do. So we won't be forming government. So it's safe to vote for me because I won't be part of government. I can just represent the Lethbridge riding and bring balance, I think, and unique ideas that we'll have a chance to talk about today to the debate in Parliament.
So what's the Christian Heritage Party all about then, Marc?
Our platform for this election campaign is based on three major planks. So life, family, and freedom. We are Canada's only pro-life federal party, so we believe in the protection of human life from conception to natural death. We believe in the family constituted by a mother, a father, and their children as the foundation of society, and that's what government should be protecting and trying to build up as the foundation. And then freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech is under attack in major ways in political discourse these days. Freedom also from government interference. There is a lot of things government is getting involved in that really isn't government's job. And so faith, life, family, freedom.
So what do you say to people though, Marc, that say, you know what, I don't want you to reopen this abortion debate. It's closed, it's over, it's done. Why do you want to reopen it?
Reopening it presupposes that it's been closed, and that's clearly not the case, right? I mean, look at it, even Elizabeth May, leader of the Green Party, right? I mean, she's tripping all over it. It's not closed. This is something that, since it has come in, there have been Canadians who have stood for the value of life, and it will not go away because this is fundamental. Without life, nothing else matters. That is the foundation of everything else. And so when a society begins to say that there are lives, human lives, that are worth less or that are not as significant or that don't need to be protected, we're heading down a very bad road.
How about assisted suicide? I've spoken to many different families who have loved ones who are dying, terminally ill, illnesses, right? Terminally ill, and they're suffering, so much pain. And they say, I just want to be able to help my grandmother, grandfather pass on peacefully from this earth. Instead, like my father died as well from cancer back in 1997. I saw the pain and suffering he went through. There was no doctor-assisted suicide at that point in time. But what do you say to that family that says, I just want, and the individual as well, is willing to go through doctor-assisted suicide? So
it's a question of where our priorities are as a society and what we value. So that idea that assisted suicide is a way out, is a choice. Those are emotional decisions. They're very difficult decisions. I've not had to deal with it personally, but close acquaintances and more distant family certainly have. And it's not something to give a glib answer for, right? But there's also a danger in using a very emotional story to change the direction of public discourse. And so as a government trying as a society to care for people, we can't be swayed by the emotions, we can't discount them, but what is that really saying? Many people, when you investigate that choice for physician-assisted suicide, it's often because they feel like they're not contributing, they feel like that the pain is insurmountable, or they're a burden to others, or sometimes it's their loneliness. So there's usually something behind it. And if we could put the structures in place where that choice wasn't necessary, then that choice wouldn't be necessary. And so by investing in palliative care, allowing people to have the relief. The technology does exist. It's not very well accessible outside of a few major centers, but it does exist for effective pain relief. And then to consider what message are we sending? If there is a point in a person's life when their life is no longer worth living, we're now dividing people into categories of worthy of life and unworthy of life. And that is how totalitarian regimes begin. That is not a direction we should be going. Every life is valuable and needs to be protected.
Marc, the fact that Canada carries this huge debt burden, a lot of Canadians are talking about how can we reduce the deficit and the debt. You actually have an interesting take about how your party can work with the Bank of Canada. Why don't you share that with our viewers?
Happy to do that. This is a policy that's unique to the Christian Heritage Party. It's one that I wish the major parties would borrow. It's actually not the CHP's idea originally. It's something that has worked very well in Canada in the past. Around the time of World War II and afterwards, some of the major infrastructure projects that built our country, the St. Lawrence Seaway, the Trans-Canada Highway, were financed by the Bank of Canada. And afterward, we moved away from that pattern, and now we borrow from commercial banks. We pay interest on that money. The debt burden, just servicing the debt, is $70 million a day in Canada now. That's money that could go to much, much better use. That money could be coming from the Bank of Canada. So we propose allowing municipalities, provinces, maybe even sub-municipal groups, if they had enough backing, to access the Bank of Canada for interest-free infrastructure loans. So they would receive the money interest-free from the Bank of Canada. As that money was spent and repaid, it would be withdrawn from circulation. So it would not have an inflationary effect. And this is what otherwise is a danger with pumping money into the system, right, is it increases inflation. But if you look at the track record when this has been done, that wasn't the case. We can have that infrastructure money, which is so necessary for all kinds of projects these days, and not go into debt and not have an inflationary effect either.
How about stimulating the economy, in particular here in Alberta, where we've been suffering through a recession for a very long time? Where does the Christian Heritage Party stand on getting more Albertans working, and will we see a pipeline built?
So, lots of things packed up into there, of course. Will we see a pipeline built? Your guess is as good as mine. I wish so. I certainly hope that our leaders will do, and I would advocate very strongly for that to happen.
And we're talking
the fact
specifically
that we're
about
left
the
for Trans Mountain Pipeline as the issue
Right.
as the pipeline that's left is because of poor political decisions earlier on, right? This idea that parts of the country can be played against each other. We have Mr. Singh now saying that that's going to become a permanent feature under an NDP government, that provinces can veto projects. Where is the leadership of a nation? We exist as a country. We have to support each other. When Alberta does well, the country does well. So the question is then how do we achieve that stimulus? And I think all the major parties would tell you, well, the government has to do X, Y, or Z. That's not the government's job. Who creates wealth in this country? It's not the government. The government has no money of their own, no funding source of their own. It's individuals, corporations, entrepreneurs, small businesses, Canadians.
But they need those tax breaks a lot of
wealth.
times, small businesses, right?
Why? Why do they need a tax break? They need a tax break because the tax system unfairly penalizes certain kinds of activity. It's complex, and you need people working for you, 2 or 3 people for a business sometimes just to navigate the tax system. A simple, straightforward tax system that doesn't need all of that navigation can allow that prosperity to be created without government getting in the way. As soon as there's a government program or deciding, send your taxes in and we'll decide where best it can be used, we end up with corruption, we end up with misguided attempts to guess where the future is going to go. Businessmen know where the market is going. They know what is worth spending money on much better in their local areas than anyone in Ottawa does. So it's not government's job.
Many of the main federal party leaders are promising billions of dollars towards education. And what are your thoughts when it comes to our education system? What needs to be improved?
So education is a provincial responsibility, as you know. A lot of the funding for post-secondary education in particular comes from the federal government through transfers and through grants. So broadly speaking, our philosophical approach to education is that it should be responsive to parents, first of all, at the K-12 system. That's a provincial matter. On the federal level, we would suggest funding 80% of post-secondary education through vouchers to individual students. So the effect this would have would make universities compete basically for the students. Rather than being transfers directly to the universities, it would be based on enrollment, on the kinds of programs that they can offer that are responding to local needs. So increased emphasis on trades. Not everybody needs a bachelor's degree, and we shouldn't be pushing that as kind of the logical next step. Of course, we need all kinds of the professions as well.
We need electricians,
right?
we need plumbers,
many
framers,
trades,
drywallers, sure.
That part of the economic problems we're in is that we can't find the people to fill a lot of these trades positions when they're needed. So that funding is one. The other piece is it's still a worthwhile investment. For many programs, it's worth it in the long run to go and get that degree because you'll make more over your lifetime. It's the upfront cost. That's the challenge, right? So we don't believe that we should eliminate tuition. That creates an entitlement and makes some of the problems even worse that we already have. We do think that the repayment schedule should be extended. So over time, we would, even up to 10 years after graduation, a lot of people, the same time they graduate, that's when they're buying their first home, they're setting up a family, they need time to get that repayment, so we'd extend that.
A lot of people are talking about the climate crisis in our country right now, and around the world for that matter, right? And they're wanting to put billions upon billions of dollars, the federal party leaders, into climate change initiatives. What is the CHP position on that?
So you said save the world or whatever you said. The first question is whether the world actually needs to be saved. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the last number of decades, wealth and health and standard of living around the globe has skyrocketed. The number of people living in poverty has greatly diminished, even as the total number of people has increased. And so there's no such thing as a solution. Is the climate changing? Yeah. Is that man-made? The models, I have a master's degree in science. I've done a lot of modeling. There's a lot of things the models don't capture, and so there's definitely room for doubt on that matter.
And debate?
But debate
right.
should be there.
Okay.
Even accepting that it's true and that it's as bad as they say, the question then is what do we do about it? And trying to reverse that and to, in particular, diminish the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. Carbon dioxide is plant food. There are real pollution problems that we should be dealing with, absolutely. But carbon dioxide is not one of them. The attempts to do that are actually going to have the effect of trapping people in poverty, because the reason energy is so important is fossil fuels in particular, because they're energy in a compact and cheap form. And the world needs that to get people out of poverty, to have the ideas to then, as happens in the Western world, develop solutions to all kinds of environmental challenges.
We have an opioid crisis, Mark, in our city and our country and many areas around the world right now. An opioid crisis, right? Big Pharma, they're being sued by major groups for hundreds of billions of dollars. What is your plan specifically for Lethbridge? How can the feds actually help Lethbridge? I talked to Mayor Chris Spearman talking about scan houses so we can shut down the drug houses permanently, get a federal prosecutor in place here in Lethbridge. What are your thoughts about getting a plan to beat the opioid crisis, tackle it head on?
Tackling it is definitely where it needs to be, right? It's complex. There's no one thing that's going to fix it. And I think that's part of the problem, specifically here in Lethbridge as well, right? Is that the approach has been piecemeal. The supervised consumption site with the best of intentions. I think the people who are there really care about their clients and want to see them do well. But in the big picture, is it caring for someone to maintain them in an addiction that is destroying their life? The message that we're sending right now is, it's your choice, it's a valid choice. As long as you want to make that choice, we'll support you. Hopefully someday you'll make a better choice. We can do better than that. We can call people to the life that they ought to live, to their full potential. And that means having the treatment beds available, having absolutely the enforcement on the front end to prevent the drugs from coming into the country, border controls, but then caring for people in the long term, not just a feel-good solution right now, but how does that whole track record work, giving them something to live for.
Marc Slingerland, the Federal Christian Heritage Party candidate for Lethbridge, thanks a lot for joining me in studio.
Thanks for having me, Hal.